I want to welcome everybody to the third meeting today. As mentioned in all the debriefs before, this will be a question and answer session. Because we have so many people, what I've decided to do is to ask several members to ask questions directly to Pedro live. I think I have approximately 10 or 11 written questions. If the live questions are exhausted, we'll move on to the written ones. Pedro is preparing to set himself up. Let's open with a word of prayer. Holy God, we thank you that we can have the privilege of coming together to open and study your word. As we study the subject of Acts 27, its relation to the institutions, both internally and externally, and also to the Sunday law. We ask and pray that you would bless this question and answer session. And may each of us have a clearer understanding of what is being taught. In Jesus' name, amen. So if you can set your video up, Pedro. So I'm going to ask if Aaron can ask the first question.
I think you're muted.
You're on mute, Aaron.
Good start. Can I just check your methodology on the anchors?
Of course.
So you discovered Biden by going to the root word in Greek. But for Kamala, you used an entirely different methodology. You said a boat and an anchor look like a lotus flower. So William Miller tells you to trace your symbol through the Bible. He ran taken away through the Bible. And that would be the same as you running the word cast or dropped through the Bible. Elder Jeff ran chariots and horses through the Bible. And that would be the same if you ran anchors through the Bible. When Elder Tess wanted to know what a ship represents, she did the same. And if you run ship through the Bible, it can represent a church. But what I think you've done You say, I want to know what the anchors symbolize. So I'm going to find something that looks like a boat and an anchor. Then you said, well, a lotus flower looks like a boat and an anchor. And then you've looked for something in the modern world, which means lotus. And that's how you decided that the anchors represent Kamala. So that would be like Jeff saying, what looks like a horse? Maybe a dog or a deer or something. And then Jeff would have had to find something in the modern world that means dog or deer. And he would have come to the wrong conclusion. If I'd have tested what you're doing with the same ship, she'd say, what looks like a ship? Maybe a duck sitting on water or a shipping buoy or something like that. And then Elder Tess would have had to find something in the modern world that means duck. So I'm thinking that you're interpreting symbols in a way no one has ever done before. Because the message doesn't look like rain. And a lamb doesn't look like Jesus. And a field doesn't look like a church. And if you agree and you just say, okay, I got that bit wrong, let's just skip that bit. I think your prediction would just fall apart when Biden steps down, for obvious reasons. Thank you.
Before you speak, Pedro, Aaron, could you just, some of us may not have caught all the points that you're making or the objections that you're bringing forth. Can you summarize it in sort of either a very short sentence or like bullet points so that Pedro can answer some specific points and maybe and broadly speaking, some people may have missed what the point you're making.
Okay. So in the past, we've always run our symbol through the Bible to see what it symbolizes. When you did that with Biden, you kind of did it, but with a bit of a twist, but that's okay. But when you come to Kamala, you used a methodology never before used. Instead of running anchors through the Bible to see what they represent, you said, let's find something that looks like a boat and an anchor. You said a lotus flower. And then you look for the meaning of lotus in the modern world. Does that make sense?
Thus, just quickly, because I need to choose translator. If not, I wouldn't be able to listen. Okay. Are you there, Lisa? Okay. Well, thank you for your question, Aaron. First of all, I want to say that I'm open to the possibility of finding symbols in a new way. Even if it's something that has never been done before. I want to be also honest. I didn't run the word anchors through the Bible as you suggested. So I think I will have to catch up with that. I also think that we tend to see too much emphasis in the name meanings. When we should be focusing on the structure. So I could debate about the technicality if what I did with Kamala or Biden is correct. But what I feel I'm ready to defend is that in 2021, we have the anchors. And they stop the ship from crashing. Right when we have American democracy almost falling. So even if we didn't have Biden or Kamala, I believe I would still arrive to the conclusion that it is a democratic presidency. Then the fact that anchors seem to be related to Biden in one way, or to Kamala in a sort of interesting imagery. It kind of seems to be just a nice hint. But even if you remove the names I just said, the anchors would be a democratic presidency.
Pedro, could I just answer a follow-up question?
Yep.
Do you agree between the front and back anchors, you're using completely different symbols or applications for the same symbol? I think that's Aaron's point.
So that in one place it is Biden and in the other is Kamala. That's the difference?
No.
The approach.
The methodology for one set of anchors is one model, and for the other set of anchors, you're using a different methodology, and yet the symbol is the same. His problem is you're using different methodology for the same symbol. That's the crux of his point.
I see his
Do you see
points.
that? Okay. The second question then, based upon what you said, if you take all the symbology of anchors out, so you no longer have Biden and you no longer have Camilla, you're saying you have the same conclusion. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Arian, over to you.
Yes. Hi, Pedro. This is a question I've asked you before, and you've answered it as well. But a short introduction. A short introduction to my question. You mentioned in your study that that first 30 is the Sunday law. Because Ellen White says there, at the break of day, etc., etc.
Can I stop you for a moment? Pedro, can you show the whiteboard as Arian is giving the introduction so we can see the whiteboard of what he's referring to? You can carry on, Arian.
Yes. Just a second.
You carry on, Arian. Don't wait.
All right. So you're saying the Sunday law starts at verse 30? So you didn't say it with these words, but my conclusion from what you said today was that the Sunday law is from verse 30 all the way to the end of the chapter, verse 44, 45. Is that correct? Do you see 30 to 44 as the Sunday law?
I see Sunday law being verse 41. I'm not listening to my translator because if I need to switch back and forth, is it a possibility that I can see Elisa in the camera so I know when she stops?
You can hear her?
Okay. So I believe Sunday law or shipwreck, it's verse 41. But I suggested that shipwreck it's unavoidable from verse 30 when they lost the boat. Then in verse 40, it's where the anchors are taken up. So I would say that in verse 40, clearly the ship hasn't crashed with it to the island. In 41, it does. I just wanted to emphasize that verse 30 is a decision that is made.
Do you have a translator, Pedro? Because my translator is running at the same time when you talk.
Elisa, you're right. Elisa, either he's not hearing you or you're going too fast.
It's my fault. It's my fault. Sorry, Elisa. I will go back a little bit.
You can't hear her, or?
The thing is that if I listen to her, I think I can listen to you. So, yeah, but your translation silences him a little bit. So, what I said is, okay, so I just said that verse 41 is shipwreck. For that Sunday law. Then I said, verse 40 is when those anchors are taken up. Which I believe to be Biden's end of presidency. Verse 30 will just be the decision that made it inevitable to shipwreck. So if I'm forced to see the Sunday law in a period, I would choose verse 30 as the beginning. But this doesn't deny the fact 41, it's when they crash. So that is Sunday law.
So you're saying January 6th to January 20th, that's the period And verse 30 is then January 6th.
Yes.
Pedro, could you draw that on your board, please? The verses and the events.
Let me do it like this.
Okay. So my question is, or actually the question that I want to ask is, when Elder Tess started on Acts 27, she recognized Midnight Cry. That I think she recognized it verse 27, 28. And then she recognized Sunday Law, which was 40 and 41.
One moment. Pedro, could you go to the bottom of your sheet and start clean so it's in order?
Much better.
Yeah. So, and that was because Elder Tess then marked the 273 in the middle. And that is verse 37. And it was for her very important that this number 273 was marked in the middle between the Midnight Cry and the Sunday Law. Because it's a symbol for the Levites in this time period of the harvest of the Levites. And also with her move to the story of Pyrrhus, she marks the 273 between Midnight Cry and Sunday Law. And now in your application, verse 37 would be at the Sunday Law. What will be yours? Did you have thought about it, or?
Yeah, of course.
Before you answer, Pedro, Arian, can you just summarize what you're saying on that board work? What's the objection and the problem for you?
My problem is that Elder Tess marked verse 37 between Midnight Cry and Sunday Law. And that was very important because that was fundamental to her structure. And what I understand from your presentation now is that verse 37 belongs to the Sunday Law. And that doesn't seem in line with what Elder Tess said. So I'm wondering.
Okay. So the beginning of my response.
On your board,
Oh, sorry.
you have 3032 slash 4041. Is that verse? Go ahead.
Yeah, those are verses.
Is that verse 3241? That's part of Arian's question, I guess.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so in summary, what I said is verse 30 is in the year of the Sunday law, at least. But then when you continue reading, if chronologically, in order, sorry, this is the verse where we see the 273. And so it seems like I jumped forward. So my first answer would be a quick question. Do you remember the portion of Elder Tess talking about that symbol? Do you remember what she said? What did she say?
Can you answer the questions, Pedro, not Arian?
Okay, so I just want to make sure that he had time to watch that. So there's a portion where Elder Tess is talking about this verse in Acts 27, which we understand the 273 to be a symbol of concord. And she said pretty much the following. 273, the verse, is not essentially a waymark. And her words were, she said, it's representing the whole period. The reason I understand what she's saying, it's because in the line of Acts 27, this is Exeter, and this is the shop door. But 273, it's Concord, but not Concord in Acts 27. It's going to be Concord in a line that she's going to connect. So she would put 273 here. We cannot have a Concord after an Exeter. So the way that I see why I jumped the chronological order it's based on the themes. You see that in Acts 27, there's verses that talk about interactions within the ship, certain things that people do and say. And then there are things that are related strictly to the ship. My answer would be that in the application, after verse 30, which would be verse 31 to 39, no, actually 38, 31 to 38, this is a parenthesis talking about the experience of the people within the ship and not about the ship itself. That's the way I see it.
Can I give a short follow-up response / question?
Yes.
So let's say that's okay. So basically you're saying in X 27, 273 is not a waymark, but it represents the whole period.
And Elder Tess said that. I agree.
Okay, and only when you bring it to the story of Pyrrhus, it becomes a waymark.
Exactly.
But then still, I would not if verse 37 is a symbol, if verse 37 is the Sunday law, then I would say it's a symbol for the Sunday law and not for the whole period.
But if
Because
you see it as a parenthesis,
what's
it's not
that?
talking about the sheep. Verse 31
Okay.
to 38, it's Paul breaking bread with the people, encouraging them, and preparing them for what they have to do. I don't have an
Pedro,
application for what that is.
is verse 31 to verse 38 the Sunday law history or before the Sunday law history?
Sorry, I have said 31. I meant 33, not 31, sorry. 30 to 32, it's still January 2025, according to me. Sorry for the confusion. So here's where Paul
On your
starts
board,
speaking with the people.
if you move the Bible, just put the verses where you believe they go, from verse 30 to verse 44.
So I believe it would be the following. This why we're strange. Sorry about that. What I believe is verses 33 to 39. We just confirm. No, 38 is speaking about the whole period. And I'm taking out
33 to 38 is pre-Sunday law.
Yeah, the whole period in between.
Pre-Sunday law. Pre-Sunday law, yes?
Yes.
And 30 to 32 is Sunday law, and 39 to 41 is Sunday law.
Yes.
If I ask on Arian's behalf, what gives you the license to cut those 5 or 6 verses and move them?
So the only reason I have, besides Elder Test saying that verse 37 represents the whole period, not a waymark, I would just say that these verses are not talking about the experience of the sheep. So it's making, sorry. I believe it's expanding about the experience of the people within the sheep between this period. I don't have a good defense.
You can have
I
a
don't have any
follow-up question.
stronger evidence for that than what I just said. That's how I see it.
So you're saying 33 to 38 is pre-Sunday law because Elder Test said so, and 30 to 32 is Sunday law because you see symbology there.
So I would say that again, Sunday law, it's 41. But I believe 30 to 32 is 20 to 25, which is in the year, even the same month.
Do you have a follow-up point, Arian?
No, that was it. Thank you. I have one, but that's maybe for the next round.
Blessing?
Hi, Pedro, can you hear me?
Hear you well.
All right. So the question I want to ask you right now is related to the application you made to the third shift in Acts 28. So generally, we understand as a movement that a way to confirm that a model is correct is if you can take an unrelated story or model and show the same story or the same structure. So an example is the parable of Matthew 13, the wheat and the tares. Shows a similar pattern to the three angels' messages in Revelation 40. They are two unrelated stories, but they bring you to a similar conclusion. When it comes to how events play out, the structure of the event. So you can have confidence that it's correct. So what Daniel and Revelation give to us is a structure about the time of the end, which begins in 1798 and extends to the second advent. And particularly Revelation 12 to 19 tells many stories, but one of them is the role of the United States, and it extends it from 1798 to the second advent. The parable of Matthew 25 is particularly Adventism's parable. It explains the experience of the Adventist people. And when you look at it, it begins in 1798 and extends to the close of probation, second advent time period as well. So these were truths that were established by our Alpha history. It's not something that we had to figure out. Then now the test came and did the study of Acts 26 to 28. She spoke about Paul interacting with the church, the head of the Jewish church and the head of the Roman state. And showed how both entities, both institutions rejected the truth. And then she went to chapter 27. And looked at the first ship, the ship of Adramyttium, and said, the name of that ship, which means I shall abide in death, corresponds to the experience that the church and the state had in the previous chapter. So I'm not getting into all the details, but she then used this to basically use the ship to represent the experience of the church and the state, the two institutions. And if you look at the first ship, she marked it from 1989 to the Sunday law. Which is the history of Daniel 11, verse 40, part B. And the theme of Daniel 11, 40, part B in a simple form is the rise of the king of the north, or the rise of the seventh kingdom of Bible prophecy. And she shows how that model is confirmed by that first ship. Then we move to the second ship, because when that ship stopped, Paul and the other occupants had to move into a new ship. And she basically says it represents both the church and the state again. And the connecting link is the people that were in the ship. But the theme of this second ship is different. Because the name is different.
Blessing, if you can go a
And the
little bit,
history is different.
if we can go a little bit faster, otherwise we'll run out of time.
Okay. Okay. Okay, so I was saying the name is different and the history is different. So considering the history, she then extended the ship back to 1798, like you did. Alexandria goes back to 1798. That's where it begins its journey. And then she went further to look into the history and said ships of Alexandria would transport grain to the Roman Empire from Alexandria in Egypt all the way to Italy, and the base was Puteoli. So even though the second ship was wrecked, when the third ship came, she made it a continuation of the second ship, because it's the same theme. And she applied that ship from the close of probation to the second advent. And that seems to confirm models we already have about the role of the United States in Adventism extending from 1798 to the second advent. So my question is, rule number 4 of Miller's rules says we should bring all the information we have on a subject before we form a theory or make an application. So the first part of my question is, did you consider that application that Elder Tess made? And the second part is, how do you then justify, how do you transition from what she put in place to the application you made?
Okay, so I will just summarize Blessing's question. He's asking about study of Elder Tess where she put the third sheep forward in the line. Specifically from the close of probation to the second advent. I believe it was in 2020, around that time. The question is how then I'm using the same sheep and applying it to a different part of the line. Is that right?
Not quite. It's did you consider the application that she made? And then how do we move from that known to a new application? Because
Before you answer that, Pedro, Blessing, do you see what he has done? And do you disagree with what he's done?
I disagree with it because I think it's the same theme. So it's a continuation, not a new story.
Is that the only problem that you see?
No, it's not the only problem, but
Okay.
yeah.
Pedro, if you carry on.
So I will skip the part of the question that says if either I knew about application before I did this. And I want to stick to the theme as Blessing said. And my answer would be, I believe Elder Tess and I made a different application of this ship. It's not only that a symbol can have more than one meaning, but I believe I stick to the actual theme of this chapter, which is the institution. And I believe the institution begins in 1798. And it ends as Sunday law. And I don't disagree with Elder Tess application. I just believe it's another application of the same ship.
Blessing, can you do that? A different application of the same ship?
I don't think so.
Okay, no, you say no.
No.
Pedro?
See, I believe in we can do it.
Blessing, why do you say we cannot do that?
I'm saying it can't be done in this context because the basis of the applications is the themes of the ships. You actually have two different ships. One is Adramitium, which is one theme. The other is Alexandria, which is another theme. And the one of Alexandria is not split into two themes.
Well, what I
It's a
say it's
continuation of the same theme.
I'm going to move on. I'm going to move on to Curtis. I think you've made your point.
okay.
Um, I'm working on the assumption, Pedro, that you, in the ship of Alexandria and Adramyttium, not the third one you discussed, you're developing upon the study that Aldertest did on Acts 27.
Could you put your video on, please?
Mine, it's on. And you're not necessarily making a different application from what she's done. So that being said, when we consider symbols being used within a story or a parable, as you've pointed out, we often use symbols differently, but that's dependent on the story that you're telling. So, for instance, we use the symbol of locusts in to represent the armies of Rome, but in another story, we use the symbol of locusts to represent radical Islam. Ellen White will take one parable and make a different application of the field in the wheat and tares that Jesus makes, but she's telling a different story. So if you are telling the same story as has been told by Elder Tess in Acts 27, when you get to verse verse 37 of Acts 27, and we identify this number 273 based on that number minus the three, Paul, Aristarchus, and Luke. That gets associated with the symbol of Levites because of several proofs of evidence, one being in Numbers where the number of priests needed to be made up. So this symbol is tied to Levites in previous studies of Acts 27. But you've used the symbol of the people on the ship as Congress. In the same story. And my question is, do you have precedent to do that type of methodology? And if so, what is that precedent? Because one of the key rules that we use to establish what we believe is this idea of threading, telling a consistent story in the story you're telling. Yeah, does my question make sense?
Yeah, can you,
If
in a
I can,
nutshell,
if I can
tell me the question?
summarize,
Oh yeah, summarize, please.
273 is a symbol of the church, people in the church. And Pedro is using those same people as a symbol of Congress. Is that your question?
Yeah. Yeah.
How can you do that, Pedro? That's his question.
So let me quickly go to, I don't know if I can paste this. Oh, I can take it like this. So the beginning of my answer is the ship is two institutions, not only one. The 273 is talking about people in the SDA ship, if we can say that. But I don't think we have considered that it's talking about the church, not about the US institution. So I will use this. I haven't presented this because I'm still working it out. But if we're saying that Paul, this is Paul, and we're saying that he represents the movement, I'm not able to. So I hope you can see, because I cannot write with the pen here. I don't know why. So if Paul is the movement, the question is, can Paul be the movement to the USA institution as well? So I think this is kind of like internal, external type of thing. So I agree with the application. Yes, the people in the ship are Levites. Besides Aristarchus and Luke and Paul. But that doesn't tell us what they are for the USA institution. So when I make the sailors Congress, I was forced to find, well, what are the other people in the ship? Because if you read this quote that I have just in here.
Could I stop you for a moment, Pedro?
Yeah.
Curtis, you understand his logic. Two ships, internal, external. Therefore, two groups of people, internal, external. That's his license.
I have follow-up. Sure, I have a follow-up question, but maybe I should wait for him to finish that.
Do you agree with his license to do that?
No, and
just tell us simply why you don't.
Because when we look at the people in the ship, we look at their relationship with that institution. So, for instance, we point out that Paul takes charge of the ship and now becomes the leadership of that ship. Between Panium and the Sunday Law. So at each of these different waymarks, I think we should be telling the same story at each of those waymarks and how this movement interacts with both of those institutions. In the story of Acts 27, at least.
So
my
your
response is,
argument is that there's two ships, internal, external, but only one group of people, which are internal or church, and you say that church has to interact externally and internally.
In symbology, yes.
Pedro?
so I don't know. I don't know how can we say this movement became leader of the USA institution. I can see it spiritually for the SDA movement. We are the leaders of that movement. But I don't see us interacting with the external and not, we are the, sorry. So I don't see us not either interacting or being the leaders of the other portion of the coin, which is the USA institution. That's why I believe Paul represents the press.
I want to move on to Janice now. I know you had a follow-up question, but if there's time, we can do that. But I think we understand what the disagreement is.
Hi, can you hear me?
Very well.
Okay. The question I want to ask is not directly connected to what you taught or to the content of your study. It's a more general question. So the election is in 3 days. And let's say Kamala Harris wins. Would you see that as a confirmation to the truthfulness of your study? Of your whole study and its methodology? And the other way around, if she loses, does that mean that your interpretation was wrong and all of your study was wrong? So I was wondering, how do you see that, and how would you like the movement to see that? Or how would you like the movement to react or respond to any outcome?
Thank you for the question. So if we see Kamala wins the election, I think it's going to take some days to know that. That wouldn't still confirm what I understand. The other piece of the story is that even winning, she doesn't become president. I believe we should be able to see that conclusion around January 6th, January 20th. So if she wins and then she doesn't become president, I would consider the study to be correct. Now, if we come to a 2016 scenario where Trump won the election, doesn't matter that he lost the popular vote, I would say that my application is wrong. Did I answer?
Yes.
Thank you.
I just want to clarify, Pedro.
Yep.
If she wins the election, you won't know until January if the prediction is correct.
Exactly, because if she becomes president,
yes, that's fine.
the study's wrong.
Yes. If she loses, Janice's question was, is the whole study wrong?
I cannot say which part of the study is going to be wrong. It's certainly verse 30. It could be the whole thing or just portions of it. We'll have to work it out.
The reason why I wanted to double check that is I think it was Aaron's question about the anchors. And you said the study stands up if you take Biden and Kamala out of the story. And I think Janice has asked almost the same question as Aaron. And I think you've said if she loses, the prediction fails.
If she loses, I think my prediction fails.
Yes, I understand that here. But when Aaron asked a similar question based upon methodology, you said the study isn't dependent upon Biden and Camilla application to anchors. Which would mean that she doesn't have to be part of the story. And you've just said that she has to be part of the story.
Can
So
I just ask something?
Yeah, go ahead.
Didn't you mean that the names, the meanings of the names, the study doesn't depend on the meanings of the names? That's how I understood it.
Yeah. Yes. So answering Ella Parminder, even if anchors do not represent a specific person like Kamala or Biden, my current position is that those anchors represent a Democratic presidency. If the front runners, whoever that is, we know it's Kamala, is not certified, but she actually won the election, I think the interpretation would be still the same.
Thank you. The next person is Justina. Thank you, Janice.
Hi, Pedro. My question is on the sounding of the fathoms. So when you placed the 20th fathom on 2021, and then at shipwreck, you said there will be 0 fathoms. because you counted down 15, 10, and 5. And then when you put dates to those are we supposed to view them as waymarks? If so, can we have three waymarks?
Am I losing Justina? Is it just me?
Yes, but
Okay.
her audio seems to be working. If you can answer what she said so far.
I think you just returned. Justina, you said if I can see 3 waymarks in between, what else?
So my question is, between 2021 and 2025, you marked 2022, 23, and 24 is the sounding of the fathoms. So are you making them waymarks? Are we supposed to view it as a dispensation with 3 waymarks in between?
So my answer is that they are not waymarks, but it is a symbolic representation of the calculation of time. But they're no waymarks.
But when you put dates to them, what are you making out of that? Maybe.
Yeah, so it's to visually see what the years are that we're going down till 2025. That's why I put it there, just to visually see it. But there are no waymarks.
That's the end of my question.
Well, thank you, Jessina.
Thank you. Catherine?
Hello.
Oh.
The sequence, it's again to do with the fathoms. The sequence in Acts 27 is as follows. 20 fathoms was measured, which you applied as 2021. "15 fathoms was measured, which you applied as 2022. And then the dropping of 4 anchors, which you applied as 4 years of Biden-Harris. So the dropping of the anchors comes after the symbol for 2022, not before it. After the symbol of 2022. Yeah, you've applied it to 2021. So there is an issue with the sequencing that I can see. And I wonder how you can explain why you would apply it to 2021.
So what I understand is that the measurement both took place in 2021. And they represent a time element. But I'm placing a symbolic layout that we can take from those two numbers. So I know that it may seem as if I'm saying they measure here 2021, and then they measure here in 2022. But what I understand is that both measurements actually took place in 2021. But I'm taking those two numbers spiritually, setting them in a layout and they're taking me to 2025. So I know it is not accurate, but I believe it's just symbolic. I don't need to strictly see, oh, the second measurement happened in the year 22. That's not how I see it.
Do you have a response, Catherine?
For what reason would you place the 4 anchors at 2021 if it's not the sequence?
Because I still believe that both measurements, they did happen in 2021.
I think that's inconsistent logic to me. It seems as though it's trying to have it both ways.
Catherine, do you have anything more to add besides your disagreement?
No.
As we all move on through the study, can all the questioners, Pedro and myself, all be on the same translator? Could we all be on the German, please, so that we're all in sync with one another? It just makes it a little bit easier.
Sure.
Rogers.
Hello, Pedro.
Hey, Rogers.
I hope you can get me.
I hear you. Now I see you.
Okay. So I had the same question as the one Marion asked earlier. Sorry.
Oh, we cannot hear you. Can you speak again?
Saying
No, actually, you're not speaking on your. You are speaking on the mic of the computer. So if you can go closer to the computer eventually, or the phone. Can you say something?
Can I go?
You're too far. Can you go closer to the mic of the computer or the phone? Yeah,
Am I
can
clear?
you speak? Yeah.
Okay. So you said that when it comes to Egypt for election.
You got far away again, so you have to come closer again, even closer, because actually you're not speaking in the earphones. You're speaking the mic. You choose the wrong mic to speak. You have to switch mic. On the computer, you have to switch the mic on which you speak. On the audio, you have to switch the mic.
I'm going to move on to Tamina while Rogers and Snyder work out their technical problems, if that's okay.
Hi, Pedro. My question is about the anchors. We are given the detail that it's 4 anchors. And as we know from X27 already, there's an importance to the quantity or the numbers. So you have given us your thought of what the anchors are. I was wondering if you have any thoughts about the number 4, if it has any relevancy or if it's important. That it's 4 anchors.
Thank you for the question. I think the number gives reference to the 4 years. So the anchors would be basically each of the 4 years of Biden. I don't need the number 4 to know that this is a presidential period. I think it's nice that we have it there, and it's 4.
Can I make a follow-up question?
Hopefully. For me, it's fine.
Okay, Prime Minister's not answering, so I just ask it. So you use the number 4 as evidence that it's a democratic presidency?
Not actually. I would say the number 4 gives evidence that these anchors represent presidential periods. But for me, the evidence that this is 4 years is based on the fact that the institution knows that they will crash soon. So I would say they know that because Trump is coming back. I don't think Trump is going to have a third opportunity in the future. That's why I understand it to be only 1 presidential term. Together with the other evidence is 4.
So at the end, that it's 4 anchors is not so important for your study.
Not as much, but it's nice to have it.
Okay, thank you.
Tyler.
Hey, can you, oops. Hey, can you hear me all right?
Hear you well.
Okay. So my question is about the anchors as well. So Aaron took my initial question about the anchors. Or rather, we had the same question about it. Regarding the naming methodology. So I won't go back into that question. But I'll just agree that I have concerns about that as well. My question is about, you said the anchors are democratic presidencies. And you said you could prove this without the use of the names. So the first part of the question is, how would you do that? The second question I have, which is a little relates to the anchors, and really has to do with the sequencing that several people have brought up with the anchors as well. Or not just the anchors, but with the verses themselves. The second set of anchors never gets dropped. So why does that mean Harris has to win the election and then have an issue with certification? Because there seems to be an issue again with the sequencing. You're pulling that verse to the Sunday law. But then you also see Biden's anchors at the end in verse 40, 41. Yeah, verse 40. Sorry, thank you. So that's my question. How do you prove that they represent democratic presidencies? And then how do you address the
Overlapping?
sequencing issue?
Okay, thank you for the question. So the beginning of the answer, I believe, is we know America was under a Republican administration. And Act 2070 say they're headed to the rocks in 2021. So I think it's, at least for me, it's obvious that it has to be the only other option which is a democratic presidency. I believe the anchors are prophesying about a return of a democratic presidency. After Trump's first term. Now, about the second part of the question, I said the anchors of Biden are verse 29. So we put 29 here. But these same anchors, they reappear in verse 40. Yet I'm saying that in verse 30, we have camel as anchors. I think it's part of the overlapping of presidents from where, go ahead, from where, when they are elected and when they finally get certified and inaugurated.
If I can offer one quick follow-up.
Before you do that, Tyler, what's question 1?
Question 1 is how does he show that the anchors are the Democratic presidencies?
So, Pedro, can you answer how do you get anchors equals a presidential cycle? Where do you get that? If you take out the names of the presidents.
Yes. So the ship is going towards the rocks, verse 28, 20 and 29. But they drop anchors to avoid crashing. That threat of ending of a democracy, I believe, is January 2021. Meaning that a continuation of a Republican presidency, which would have been Trump,
Can I stop you for a moment?
Rocks. Yeah.
It sounds like you're using logic as opposed. I suppose you're using logic rather than methodology or symbology. I think Tyler's question is, how'd you get a presidential cycle from anchors? Using methodology, not logic.
Let me try to separate the two.
The reason I say that is without defining anchors some other way other than logic. The symbol of the group of, we could just call them civil servants. We've already shown to be able to restrain Trump during his presidency. Could be an equally valid symbol to use here. If we're just talking about something that stops shipwreck. I don't necessarily agree with that symbol, just that I'm offering an alternative using the same idea or logic.
Tyler, can you use logic to replace symbology?
I think you would need proper context to be able to do that if you were going to do that.
Do you have a response, Pedro? Or I wanted to repeat the second question if you don't have a response to that.
I want to say that he said, if we have proper context, we can do it. use logic over symbology. I think I have proper context.
Go ahead.
I just said I think I have
to translate. To translate.
Sorry.
I let Tyler get away with that, but the context is the symbology. Because otherwise you apply logic upon logic. The context has to be the symbology, I think.
I agree with that. I see what you're saying.
If you don't have
sorry?
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, as of now, I don't think I have a proper answer for those good questions.
Second question, Tyler?
The second question was about the sequencing of the verses.
Summarize what you're unhappy about.
Overlapping verse 30 and verse 40 in the same waymark. Without a reason to do that, which is what we were talking about earlier with the chopping up the verses. That was it.
So, well, I think I answered already. For me, the anchors in verse 40 is Biden leaving office. And 30, sorry, go ahead. And verse 30 is just Kamala's presidency not being certified. Now, why are those anchors meaning that she won the election? I think you asked. Did you?
That was the second part of it.
So my defense was that if in the back of the ship, dropping the anchors was to certify without mentioning elections, because the elections would have been the year before the waymark that we have. I think the Bible, it's highlighting this other set of anchors because it means that she wants the election, yet never dropped.
The follow-up to that, I guess, would just be that if we don't have a solid reason to define that symbol as presidencies, you're like 3 or 4 steps of logic down that line without defining your initial symbol, I think, properly. You're now at the point where you're talking about the nuance of election versus certification. Of a different person, even, Kamala Harris. Without defining, again, I think, without the names, what those anchors even are.
Okay, so does my logic about the anchors being a Democratic presidency is not enough? I know it's logic and not symbology.
I just want to move on and ask if Snyder or Rogers have worked out their technical problems.
Can you be able to hear me?
I hear you.
Okay. I'm trying to put in video. Okay. So my question is in relation to the repeating patterns that you wrote at the beginning of the class. And you indicated the four-way map, 1989, 2001, 2021, and 2025. And then you wrote Boston as the first way map, then Concord, Exeter, and then Shandong. Okay, so my question is in relation to what we, like the beginning of the repeating patterns back in 2018, I believe. And I believe we went to the history of the Millerites from 1998 to 1840. And also from July 21st to October 22nd, 1844. And how it was drawn was that the repeating pattern is between two major waves. How it was drawn, it was between like two smaller waves.
I lost you.
So you have two smaller wavelengths. So like
Two smaller waymarks between the two major waymarks. This board work, I don't think is representing what she's talking about. Is she? Is it?
no, but I'm trying to make material with the back. So I'm referencing the repeating pattern studies that was done back in 2018. That's what I'm doing. So Pedro has written like Boston Concord, etc. is a major waymark of the following.
Snyder, could you switch your video off, please, and just do audio?
Yeah. So my question is in relation to those repeating patterns. How can you fix them in the major waymark while we have understood them to be two smaller waymarks between two larger waymarks? Yes, and then another, maybe a related one is...
Well, let's stop there.
Okay.
Pedro, do you understand the question?
I want to know, these two smaller ones, you mean these two in the middle or another ones?
Yes, like between 1989 to 2000, you have two smaller waymarks in between.
Okay.
Then Boston, Concord, Exeter. Boston as 1989, Concord as 1991, and Exeter as 1996.
So I guess you're asking how I made 2001 and 2021 Concord and Exeter?
Pedro, is that okay? Am I clear?
I just want to clarify part of your question. Are you asking me? Are you asking me how I made 2001 and 2021 Concord and Exeter?
Yes.
Okay. So the first part of my question is that I don't believe there's two smaller waymarks here. In the story of this fifth line. I don't think they're there. So that's why I understand that the Concord of this period is 2001 and Exeter is 2021. So I've never seen a study that finds all the smaller two waymarks in between using Acts 27. That was my logic.
While Snyder is waiting, Boston, Concord, Exeter, as you've got it, 89, 01 and 21. Did you create that, Pedro, or have you borrowed that from someone else?
It is my personal understanding of the fifth line.
Snyder's question is, how do you justify doing that?
Yeah.
So the way I justify it is that I understand this to be a dispensation. And I believe dispensations have this structure. Boston, Concord, and Exeter, and Chateau. These two waymarks being the big ones for the ship.
And Schneider, you have an objection to that?
Yeah. Principally, I don't think I'm doing that.
I couldn't hear you.
And maybe in relation to that, is where do you mark the formalization between 20? Oh, sorry. Maybe I'll just leave that because you said it's not in between. You just leave it.
Okay.
Why do you object to this, Snyder? What's wrong with it?
I think the story, like beginning from Boston, Concord, Exeter, it should be one concurrent story. And I think the story that he has been developing begins from 2021 going to 2025. Yeah, I think, and the like I can't thread through a story consistently from 1989 to 2020.
Pedro, is the basis of this line the threading of certification, or the electoral cycle, which would be the same thing? And is that how you get 89, 01, and 21 as Boston, Concord, and Exeter? Is this a line of election cycles?
So first of all, this is the line of the institution. These three waymarks, I did not make them up. That's what we have from the Midnight Cry. And I just have personally understood that they comprehend a dispensation. If you allow me to compare with another dispensation, here we have it. This is one dispensation of the ship, and this is the other one. So you asked about the pattern or the threading. I just observed the three waymarks that we already had. And saw that they have a consistent pattern that relate the certification, vice presidents, and the transition process between one president and another. And then I just fill in the blank, which is in the future.
Over to you, Snyder.
Okay, I think I'll stop there.
Okay. Rogers? Rogers, do you have a question?
Hello, Pedro. Can you get me?
I hear you well.
Okay. So my question was on, you suggested that 2024 election will be similar to the year 2000. We understand that the election of the year 2000 was very close. So I think we got around 221 electoral college votes.
It cut a little bit.
What?
For me. Can you repeat?
You have bandwidth problem, Rogers, and it cuts out. That's what the issue is.
No, can you come closer to the device, very close to the mic of the device, not the mic on your headphones, but the mic of the device.
Try again.
Bush had around 271 electoral college votes.
It's still too far. Sorry about that. If you can do exactly as Snyder did it, I was able to listen to her.
I'm saying Bush had 271 electoral college votes.
Okay.
And go ahead, 266. And go ahead, 266.
Al Gore. I believe that's what you said. I'm losing you.
So are you suggesting that the 2024 election will be very close. Which then will bring issues similar to 2000.
If there's going to be issues similar to 2000.
Yeah. Which will lead to Kamala not being certified. Not, if she wins by a margin close to what Biden got in 2020, I think was around 306 electoral college votes. 306, 306. Then how do they decertify that? Like what exactly happens until Trump becomes president? She doesn't with such a big margin. That's my question.
So hopefully I understood your question.
Pedro, if you understand the question, can you repeat it?
Yeah.
Because I don't understand the question.
The first thing that I understood is how Bush 271 electoral votes were certified. And how does it mean that Al Gore won the election? That's what I got. And then I understood about the big margin. Biden won over Trump by kind of a big margin. If Kamala wins a similar way, how can they steal the election? Is that what I...
Okay, sorry, let me clarify one point.
Okay.
So the explanation on why election was stolen from Al Gore in 2000 was somehow clear to me because they were fighting over one state, which is Florida.
So they were fighting over
state.
the certification of Florida.
And what they were fighting over, the margin is small. Will it be the same scenario in 2024? Where, for example, Kamala wins in Pennsylvania by a few votes. Then Trump files lawsuits. Maybe some women votes are thrown out.
Can I stop for a minute? Sorry. These sound like political questions, not prophetic ones. I'm not sure that Pedro is qualified to answer these technical political questions. And unless I'm missing what the prophetic question is.
Basically, I wanted to understand if Kamala wins, how does her not being certified look like?
So I would refer you to the different articles. I will share some. Some have already been shared.
Did I
Of how
stop
they
you,
go
Pedro?
about. Yeah.
The answer he's going to give is he doesn't know. Because these are political scenarios, not prophetic modeling. Unless I've missed something. Pedro, you can finish responding.
So sticking to the prophetic part, they will be fighting over one or more states. And how it goes specifically, I don't know. They're going to be fighting over different states. And so that's it.
If you wanted to follow up, Rogers, you can have another. You can do that.
I think the question I had was earlier asked by Arian. I'm okay.
We've run out of time. In fact, we've gone over time, of course. I want to apologize for people who wrote in their questions and didn't get an opportunity to have them answered. Maybe we'll make an arrangement with Pedro to do something about those written questions, if he's willing. I just want to make a comment. Of the 11 people that asked questions, I was only aware of the position of two of them. The other 9, I hadn't spoken to them. I had no idea what their position was, or even if they had one. Just want to make that clear to everybody. I hope that this has been a profitable and enriching experience for everybody. I know that Pedro said that he will share. We've already shared his quotes with the members. He said he's going to share his presentation notes, I think.
Yes.
So we will share that. You've heard the various questions and concerns that the questioners had. I don't know if you're willing, Pedro, to answer people's personal questions.
The ones that are written?
No, if people ask you follow-up questions.
Oh, I don't have a problem.
If anybody has any questions, I guess particularly based on the 11 questions that were asked, Pedro's willing to communicate with you or dialogue with you. I hope everybody feels that they have been served well. I hope you feel that you've been served well and fairly, Pedro. Don't have to answer.
I did.
And I want to thank the questioners. And I want to thank everybody for joining us. Having said that, if we're okay to close with prayer. Holy God, we thank you for the privilege of exploring and understanding your word. Many of us know the difficult position that Pedro has been in today. He has carried himself in an exemplary way. We thank you for his dignity and his honesty. It's up to us, Lord, that you have given a responsibility to understand the truth, individually and collectively. May we use today's studies to understand clearer our individual and our corporate responsibility. In Jesus' name, amen.